On this same planet, the ground can get hot enough to cook an egg. While somewhere else, the cold turns simply staying alive into a minute-by-minute battle. Deep beneath the ocean, darkness swallows waters, where the pressure alone can crush machines built specifically to explore them. And yet, none of these are alien worlds out in space. They're all right here on Earth, the planet we still call home. What's even more astonishing is that across these seemingly impossible places, people are still finding ways to reach them, explore them, and sometimes even live there. So just how far does Earth actually push the limits of life? We start with a name almost everyone's heard, though few really grasp its scale. Every second, the Amazon discharges roughly 209,000 cubic meters of water into the Atlantic, more than the next 7 largest rivers on Earth combined. And there's a scientific debate that still hasn't been settled, whether the Amazon or the Nile is truly the world's longest river. Some recent studies suggest the Amazon may actually be longer, but Guinness still awards that title to the Nile, because pinning down a river's exact starting point turns out to be far trickier than it sounds. At its mouth, a phenomenon called the pororoca occurs, a tidal wave up to 4 meters high that can surge hundreds of kilometers inland, dragging along fallen trees, caimans, and giant anacondas. And yet, surfers still show up every year, daring enough to ride that very wave. If the Amazon symbolizes abundant life, the next stop is almost its exact opposite. Death Valley recorded a temperature of 56.7 degrees Celsius back in 1913, the highest air temperature ever measured on Earth, though many climate scientists today still debate the accuracy of that reading. It's also the lowest point in North America, sitting more than 85 meters below sea level. But Death Valley's most famous mystery involves rocks weighing over 300 kilograms that appear to slide across dry ground on their own, leaving long trails behind them. For decades, no one knew why. It wasn't until 2014 that scientists finally figured it out. On extremely rare nights, a thin sheet of ice forms over shallow rainwater pools, then breaks apart into panels, and just a light breeze is enough to push the massive rocks along. If Death Valley left you stunned, brace yourself for the next stop, one of the strangest landscapes on the planet. The Danakil Depression, sitting where 3 tectonic plates are pulling apart in Ethiopia, holds the highest average year-round temperature anywhere on Earth, routinely topping 41 degrees Celsius every single day. The ground here is covered in blazing yellow and orange acid springs that look like something out of another planet, along with a lava lake that's remained almost continuously active for over a century. And ironically, this brutally harsh land is exactly where archaeologists discovered the fossil Lucy, one of the oldest human ancestors ever found. And if Danakil made you sweat from the heat, there's another lake in Africa that will send a chill down your spine for a completely different reason. It can turn a living creature into what looks like a stone statue. Lake Natron in Tanzania has a pH nearly as high as ammonia, with shallow areas that can reach 60 degrees Celsius. Any bird or bat unlucky enough to die on its shores gets slowly preserved, almost perfectly intact, by the sodium carbonate salts in the water. The same salt ancient Egyptians once used for mummification. One photographer discovered rows of these calcified bird bodies along the shoreline, producing some genuinely haunting photographs. But here's the lake's biggest paradox. The water is so harsh that no predator dares come near it, which is exactly what makes it the single most important breeding ground on Earth for lesser flamingos, with an estimated 1.5 to 2.5 million birds once nesting here, roughly 75% of the species' entire global population. And fortunately, this precious lake just escaped a serious threat. In August 2025, after months of advocacy from communities living around the lake, the Tanzanian government officially rejected a large-scale mineral mining project that had threatened to destroy this fragile ecosystem entirely. There's another place that holds a temperature record, but in a completely different way than Death Valley. In the summer of 2018, NASA satellites measured surface ground temperatures in the Lut Desert, reaching 80.8 degrees Celsius, the highest land surface temperature ever recorded anywhere on the planet. Here's the key distinction. Death Valley holds the air temperature record, while the Lut Desert holds the ground surface temperature record, two entirely different measurements. The black volcanic rock here absorbs heat so intensely that almost no living organism can survive on its surface. Leaving the scorching landscapes behind, we arrive somewhere that looks like it doesn't belong on this planet at all. Salar de Uyuni is the largest salt flat on Earth, stretching over 10,000 square kilometers across the Bolivian plateau. During the rainy season, a thin layer of water spreads across the salt surface, turning the entire area into the largest natural mirror on the planet, reflecting the sky so perfectly that the line between land and sky nearly disappears. That near-perfect flatness is exactly why NASA uses this site to calibrate altimeter equipment on orbiting satellites. If you've ever spotted a giant, near-perfect circle in the middle of the desert on Google Maps, there's a good chance it was this. The Richat structure, also known as the Eye of the Sahara, is a geological ring spanning 40 to 50 kilometers across the Mauritanian desert. It was once theorized to be a meteorite crater, and some even believed it was the lost city of Atlantis. But geologists today confirm it's actually just a geological dome eroded over tens of millions of years, entirely natural. Interestingly, if you stood right in the middle of it, you wouldn't even realize you were standing inside a circle at all. That strange shape only reveals itself from space. And if the Eye of the Sahara is strange for its shape, the next island is strange for the creatures living on it. Socotra, a small archipelago belonging to Yemen, has been cut off from the rest of the world for millions of years. That isolation produced an ecosystem unlike anywhere else, with more than a third of its plant species found nowhere else on Earth. Its most famous icon is the dragon's blood tree, its canopy spreading out like a giant inverted umbrella, with sap as red as blood, used by ancient peoples as dye and medicine for thousands of years. Leaving behind the scorching, strange landscapes, we now step into the exact opposite world, one ruled entirely by cold. Amur Bay, next to the Russian city of Vladivostok, holds a rather curious paradox. Despite sitting at roughly the same latitude as southern France, it still freezes over solid every winter, thanks to frigid continental air masses blowing down from the north. Every year, hundreds of local fishermen head out onto the thick ice, drilling holes to fish through it, in cold, sharp enough to freeze the eyebrows right off their faces. Not far from Russian waters lies a place where the line between today and tomorrow spans just a few kilometers. The Bering Strait, at its narrowest point, just about 82 kilometers wide, separates Russia and the United States. Right in the middle sit two small islands, Big Diomede, belonging to Russia, and Little Diomede, belonging to the US, less than 4 kilometers apart. Because the international dateline runs directly between them, they're jokingly nicknamed Tomorrow Island and Yesterday Island. Standing on one island, you're literally looking across at a different day of the week. During the harshest winters, sea ice can occasionally freeze thick enough to form an ice bridge connecting the two islands, though crossing it is strictly forbidden. Not far south of there sits a lake holding 3 world records at once. Lake Baikal is the deepest freshwater lake on Earth, over 1,600 meters deep, and also the oldest, at roughly 25 million years, holding about 20% of the planet's entire unfrozen freshwater supply, more than all 5 of North America's Great Lakes combined. In winter, its surface freezes into glass-clear ice, with frozen methane bubbles trapped right inside, creating one of the most surreal sights anywhere in the world. But if you're looking for the coldest place where people still live year-round, head deep into Siberia. The village of Oymyakon once recorded a temperature of -67.7 degrees Celsius. Nearby Verkhoyansk holds a different record entirely, the largest temperature range ever recorded on Earth, from -67.8 degrees Celsius in winter to 37.3 degrees Celsius in summer, a swing of 105 degrees Celsius. As the story goes, in 2018, the village's only mercury thermometer shattered because the temperature dropped below its measurable limit of -50 degrees Celsius. Locals had to burn fires under their trucks all night just to keep the engines from freezing solid. But even Oymyakon isn't the coldest place humans have ever measured. At Russia's Vostok Research Station, deep in the heart of Antarctica, temperatures were recorded dropping to -89.2 degrees Celsius in 1983. The coldest temperature ever directly measured on Earth's surface. At that temperature, boiling water thrown into the air freezes before it even hits the ground, and a person's own breath freezes into tiny crackling sounds in the air. After that icy journey, here's a place with an entirely different kind of beauty, fragile, and visible only for a brief window each year. Stroia Falls, Italy's tallest waterfall, plunges from a height of over 300 meters in the mountains of Piedmont. But strangely, this waterfall only truly comes alive for a few short weeks each year, in late spring when snowmelt peaks. By summer, the flow nearly disappears entirely. Tucked deep into the mountains, it's only reachable after several hours of hiking. In fact, plenty of Italians have never even heard of their own country's tallest waterfall. Before we dive to the deepest point in the ocean, there's another place hidden underground, one so massive it generates its own weather. Doong Cave, located inside Phong Nha Ke Bang National Park in Vietnam, is the largest cave on Earth by volume. With a volume of over 38.5 million cubic meters, its main chamber is spacious enough for a Boeing 747 to fly through without its wings brushing either wall. And there's a great story behind how it was discovered. In 1990, a local man named Håkan happened to take shelter from the rain near its entrance and noticed wind and clouds pouring out from inside. But he lost track of the exact location, and it took him nearly 20 years, until 2008, to find the spot again, allowing him to guide an international survey team inside. Inside the cave are two massive sinkholes, where the ceiling collapsed hundreds of thousands of years ago, letting in sunlight, rain, and seeds, giving rise to two entire patches of primary forest growing right inside the cave itself. Because warm, humid outside air meets the cooler air trapped inside, small clouds actually form and drift through the chamber, making Sunduang one of the very few places on Earth with its own weather system underground. And perhaps because of just how extraordinary it is, Vietnam has chosen to protect it with strict limits. Only 1,000 visitors are permitted to explore the cave each year, with groups capped at 10 people each. And as of early 2026, every available slot for both 2026 and 2027 has already been fully booked, meaning anyone hoping to join now has to wait until 2028. Now, our journey takes a completely different direction. Not upward or outward, but straight down, deeper than anywhere else on Earth. Challenger Deep, located at the southern end of the Mariana Trench, plunges nearly 11,000 meters down, deeper than Mount Everest is tall, plus another 2,000 meters on top of that. Pressure at the bottom exceeds 1,000 times what it is at the ocean's surface. In 2019, explorer Victor Vescovo set the record for diving to the very bottom of this trench, and while sitting at the single deepest point in all of Earth's oceans, he shut off the engine, leaned back, and ate a tuna sandwich. If Challenger Deep holds the record for depth, another spot in the ocean holds a completely different record: absolute isolation. Point Nemo is the most remote spot in all of Earth's oceans, nearly 2,700 kilometers from the nearest land in every direction. Because of that extreme isolation, it's become the official graveyard for decommissioned spacecraft. More than 260 pieces of satellite and spacecraft debris have been deliberately dropped at this exact location since 1971. Here's a fact that surprises most people. The humans closest to Point Nemo are usually not aboard any ship at all, but astronauts aboard the International Space Station, orbiting roughly 400 kilometers directly overhead. And if Point Nemo is isolated by distance, the next island is isolated for a completely different reason. It's simply too dangerous for humans to set foot on. Queimada Grande Island, off the coast of Brazil, is home to an estimated 2,000 to 4,000 golden lancehead vipers, an extremely venomous species found nowhere else on Earth but this one small island, with venom believed to be 5 times more potent than its closest relative, and the fastest acting of any pit viper. Because of that danger, the Brazilian Navy has banned civilians from setting foot on the island for decades. Only researchers with special permits, always accompanied by a physician, are allowed to visit. To close out our journey through Earth's most extreme limits, we head upward, to the highest point humans have ever reached. Above 8,000 meters on Mount Everest, climbers enter what's known as the death zone, where each breath delivers only about a third of the oxygen available at sea level. A climber's blood oxygen levels can drop to a point that, in any hospital, would be treated as a full-blown medical emergency. Most people can only survive 24 to 48 hours at that altitude. A stretch of trail near the summit has even earned the grim nickname Rainbow Valley, named for the brightly colored climbing suits of climbers who died there, still lying in place, unintentionally marking the route for those who come after. We've just traveled through some of the most extreme places left on Earth, from the largest river to the hottest land, from the coldest place humans still call home, to the deepest point anyone has ever reached. There's one thing you may have noticed running through this entire journey. In nearly every one of these places, people still find a way to show up, even if only for a moment. A fisherman drilling through ice in bone-cutting cold. A scientist eating a sandwich at the bottom of the deepest ocean on Earth. A climber, against every warning, still pushing toward the highest summit on the planet. Maybe the most extreme places on Earth aren't just where we measure the limits of nature, they're where people keep testing the limits of themselves. And while most of the world grows more familiar, more predictable by the day, these corners, whether scorching, frozen, bottomless, or forbidden, keep reminding us of one thing. This planet still has plenty left that hasn't been tamed. Thanks for joining ExtremeX Travel on today's journey. Which of these places left the biggest impression on you? Drop a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe to keep following the edges of this world with us.